Well, welcome everybody to the official start of the Mountains of Madness campaign. Um, I am RQ Stefan, and it's going to be my exceedingly sincere pleasure to, over the next very long time, um, hopefully move all these wonderful people um, through the adventure of their characters' lifetimes, or characters' multiple lifetime. We'll see how it works out. But as with any game, it would be a poor game without the players. They are, after all, the true stars of this. So I am going to go around and just have everybody quickly introduce themselves and who they're primarily going to be playing. That'll give me a moment to work out what is likely to happen next.
Well, I seem to be up in the upper corner, so I will throw myself on this pyre. Um, I will be primarily playing Charles Stoddard, who is a paleontologist with supporting sciences in biology and geology, um, as those marry well. He's definitely someone who's this is his jam. He likes going to out of the way places and finding signs of what used to live there. Um, if you the fun Easter egg about my character is the character art is a historical photograph of a real life person that was an inspiration for Indiana Jones.
Wonderful. And I guess over next, um, we'll go to Hapless. Why not?
Hello, I'm Nathan, also Hapless Mage on Discord. I'm playing Valentina Rousseau. She is a feisty young reporter. We'll see what kind of story she can dig up on this trip.
It sounds great. And then playing Roger?
Yes, hi, my name is Richard. Also go under Eldarin on Discord. I will be playing Roger Tremblay, a former physician. I still have a lot of my physician skills, but I'm basically going on this expedition as a kind of reclamation project for myself.
Wonderful. And then, of course, we have the inestimable Dr. Wigglesworth.
Thank you, thank you. Yes, I am in fact Dr. Wigglesworth, professor of geology at Harvard and head curator for their Museum of Natural History. I'd encourage anyone who's interested to check out my bio.
And finally, and by no means least, we have our brave soul of the northern winds, who's going to make sure that this group actually herds together, I imagine.
Howdy, I'm Susan Big Sue Sinclair. I'm a dog sledder, and I'm going to do my best to make sure that everybody makes it from point A to point B with all of my furry little companions.
Beautiful. And so we're going to open up the scene to middle of March 1933. And specifically, we're going to be looking at the offices of Dr. Wigglesworth up in Harvard. Edward, you're sitting down in the refectory, Across the bench is one of your long-term friends from Arkham, one Dr. William Moore. He's asked to if he could come up and have a word, and has been sounding you out about the possibility of excitement, adventure, but above all, science in far-flung parts. How are you reacting to this perhaps somewhat unexpected approach?
Can you remind me of his full name again?
Certainly, it's Dr. William Moore.
Ah, yes. I'll say something to the effect of, Bill, certainly, come on up. You know you don't need an appointment. I'm always in, especially at these hours. The sun hasn't even gone down yet. Meet me over in the museum.
And you do, in fact, end up meeting up, at least initially, over at the museum, where there are a large number of display cases showcasing all manner of interesting strata and various forms of um, calciferous and other rock types from the local and far-flung area. Now, of course, as Dr. Moore says, it's a good collection, not obviously quite on par with the one over at Arkham, but still, you're doing some sterling work around here, Edward. But it's about that I wanted to have a word. You see, together with a acquaintance of mine, one Mr. Starkweather, an adventurer, an explorer. He's done a fair amount of stuff in the Arctic. We've hit upon the idea that maybe there is something left behind by that unfortunate expedition down to the Miskatonic Mountains of 31 or 3031. And maybe there's something still there to be discovered. After all, they brought back all sorts of interesting material, and not least of all, well, their stories were beyond fantastical, frankly, but we think it can be done and should be done better with the with the advances in aviation in the last couple of years. Just to be able to draw a line under the whole thing, not leave a. We shouldn't leave a whole vast area of the world just barren to lack of discovery.
Man, I thought you were all talk coming in here, William, but you really mean to do it. An expedition to the Antarctic. Am I catching your meaning?
Indeed.
Well, I must say I've heard a rumor or two, certainly some buzz among the science community, Are you reaching out to me for consultation, I imagine?
Well, yes, I felt that, quite frankly, in all friendship, it would be rude of me not to at least sound you out if you were interested before, as it were, it becomes more public.
Why, you don't mean to have me aboard as an expedition member, do you?
The offer stands.
Goodness,
After
William.
all, Lake, and Cody themselves were there for the geology, and we know they left their drill equipment behind in their hurry to leave.
I see then. And we would be following the same expedition's path?
Mostly, yes. Certainly, our thought is to reach the upper plateau that they barely touched in the Miskatonic Peaks and close the mystery of that once and for all.
Sarah will nearly kill me, you know. But I'm sure my interest is noticeable, I'll say with a big smile. I don't know if the board is going to let me off. I don't know how I'll find the time, but well, yes, of course, yes.
Well, we'll be glad for the company and the expertise of that, I'm sure. Um, and but there's time yet, as you say, to prepare the faculties and so forth. But very glad to at least have the nod and the wink, as it were.
You know, this could really be meaningful, not just for the careers, but for education, and also to clear up some of those clouds surrounding the previous expedition. It's hung like a guillotine over so many heads for so long.
Oh, absolutely. Just just for the sake of the memory of Lake and clear the name of Gedney and see if Dyer maybe really was right.
Well, I must set my notes in order and prepare my research. I scarcely know
Well,
how I'm going to broach the subject with Sarah, but one way or another, I'll convince her.
given the seasons, I imagine that we'll start serious preparation work sometime mid early July, but we wouldn't leave until September. Try to hit the summer months down south.
Very well. As I said, I'll certainly be preparing my notes, and I hardly know what to say, William. I'm thoroughly honored and frankly quite flushed.
Thank you, thank you. Um, and with that, I think we will shift scenes and scroll forwards um, a couple of months into late May. And so the question is, where do we find Big Seuss in late May of 33? I think you're muted. I don't know. For some reason, you're not coming through.
You may need to switch your audio device. I had to do that when I followed the link specifically for Video Ninja.
But we heard Big Sue speak already. That's the strange part.
Right. The video is a bit choppy too. Could it be connection issues?
It could be, I suppose. Let me try. Let me see what I can.
Oh, we can keep the camera on Wigglesworth as he excitedly writes
Yeah,
notes for a little bit. Maybe we have
absolutely.
some commercial sponsors. I don't know.
One can hope. One can certainly hope. Let's meanwhile um, shift the viewpoint just ever so slightly. I'm going to cut down that for a bit. See if this helps. And let's have a think about where would we find Miss Russo in late May of 33.
She would probably be hanging around the offices of the Boston Globe, I would imagine.
Absolutely. That means that she's likely to come across and let's see if I can make this work. Copy link, okay, that's not, it's they're already in. So yes, I think that means that you would probably come across the note that's in the handout section called P3 Intrepid Explorer.
Okay.
So I might just have you read that out. If you single click on it, I think it'll full screen it into legibility.
Excellent. I can see it.
Did you want me to read it out or just read it to myself?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, no, that's fine. You can read it out if you wouldn't mind.
Okay. Intrepid explorers, ready expedition. We're going back, Starkweather said. The job's not done. We're going back and we're going to finish what was started and bring the whole lot back to the world. It will be a grand adventure and a glorious page in scientific history. Professor Moore, sitting quietly to one side, was less passionate but just as determined. A lot has changed in the past 3 years, he insisted. We have technology now that did not exist 3 years ago. The aeroplanes are better, brand new Boeing craft, sturdier and safer than before. Professor Peabody's drills have been improved, and we have the lake's own forecast to draw upon. We can plan ahead with better materials and a knowledge of the region that none of them had when they prepared for the voyage. Yes, I'm optimistic, quite optimistic. We will succeed in our goals. When asked what those goals were, the two men looked briefly at one another before Starkweather answered, leaning forward intently. Leapfrog, gentlemen, he smiled. We shall leapfrog across the continent. A base on the Ross Ice Shelf, another at the South Pole. One at Lake's old campsite, if we can find it. And gentlemen, we plan to cross over those fantastic mountains described by Dyer and Lake, and plant our instruments and our flag right on top of the high plateau. Imagine it, like a landing strip atop Everest. We'll have the finest equipment and skilled men. Geologists, paleontologists. We've got a Professor Albemarle,
Almal. Yep.
Albemarle from Oberlin. He wants to study weather. Glaciologists, perhaps another biologist or two. The team's not all made up yet, of course. We're not leaving for another 5 months. It is important, added Moore, to try to find Professor Lake's camp and bring home whatever we can from the caverns he discovered. The prospect of a wholly new kind of life, a different taxonomy, is extremely exciting. It would be a shame if, having found it once, we were unable to do so again. The two explorers plan to land 30 men on the southern continent, half again more than the Miskatonic expedition. The expedition is privately funded and owes no allegiance to any school or institution.
And so, as Valentina reads that excerpt coming across the wire, as it were, what's her reaction?
I think in her mind, it is a fantastic story that she's going to make the best attempt she can to cover, whether or not she has permission from the paper.
Absolutely. And to that end, we might as well open up the dice rolling and have Valentina make a library use roll if she has it.
Fantastic. It's a good question. I do have it. A 33 success, regular success.
Wonderful. And with that, you do become aware that you manage to backtrack the bylines of the story, and it came out of the New York Post. So you have essentially the name of the writing journalist at the Post, one Abe Micklesworth. And it's easy enough for you to jump on the train and head on down to New York under the cover of whatever story your editor happens to have you working on at the time. It would be a poor journalist that couldn't come up with a reason in Boston to need to go down to New York City for a day or two on just about any story they care to mention. So we can hand wave that part of the negotiation. And after having taken Abe out to a reasonably seedy establishment, you get the lowdown. In his words, the two nutcases have holed up at a small hotel down Midtown, just a few blocks up from Times Square. And you basically manage to make your way there, and you have a quiet word with the man behind the front desk. No, casually just leave $1 bill on the register, and you're shown up. Well, given the information that they have a meeting room set up on the 5th floor, which is the top floor. And it's not long before you are in an impromptu meeting, or you come into this conference room, or it's in reality at this point it's really just a hotel suite that's sort of set up as with the living room being set up as an office. You see the two gentlemen, one being introduces himself as Professor Moore, the other as James Starkweather. Mr. Starkweather is a tall, thin, heavily mustachioed English gentleman, quite forthright in his manner, but almost oddly obsequious in his bluster. It's quite clear that he holds a great regard for the people of the press and the power that they can wield in the public mind, shall we say.
It's certainly a power you're going to need for this expedition, I think.
Oh, and what an expedition it's going to be. It is going to be, well, I won't say glamorous because it probably won't be that, but just about any other OUS word you would care to print. And we have as yet not selected the specific people of the press that we would want to bring along. After all, there is only a limited amount of room on board, especially given the having the need to provide facilities for both sides of the coin, as it were. But tell me, Mrs.
Miss.
What makes Miss? What would make you particularly suitable for being given the honor of regaling the world with our discoveries.
I think you'll find me quite passionate about my stories. I've been known to go a bit over the top, but I tend to be quite glamorous and over the top and really enjoy the stories that I write. And I think that I can paint this expedition in a much better light than the previous one.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. So glad to hear that there are people out there willing to show our gallantry in its true and magnificent light. We will be no doubt glad to have you on board. We will be in touch.
Fantastic.
And you're shown downstairs, and as you being shown out of the door, the more well, he hasn't spoken all meeting. The shorter, stockier Professor Moore kind of just takes you aside and says, "Don't let the bluster of Mr. Starkweather lull you into a sense of worry. He is, at heart, quite an accomplished adventurer, both in Africa and in the Arctic. But we have a few months yet to prepare, and we will do our utmost to make sure that we are as prepared as we may be for the excursions ahead. Now, if you will excuse me to that end, I do have to get back to the folks out at Boeing about the planes. You'd think they were on the other end of the continent or something, with the amount of hurdles they're putting in our way.
Yes, thank you very much for the meeting. I look forward to the expedition, and I'll make sure to slip them my card so they have my contact information.
Absolutely, and yeah. So let's see. Next up, let's see if we have. Well, let's try Big Seuss again. See
Can
if
you
we
hear
have
me
all.
now?
Oh, we can hear you. Yes.
Okay, so what we're going to do is I'm going to try to see if I can run Quest through my phone as opposed to overworking my poor little laptop with Ninja as well as Quest and see if maybe that helps.
Okay.
All right, so where were we?
We were towards the end or the very last few days of May 1933.
All right. Well, as I was saying, with it being May of 33, that would mean that Iditarod, Alaska has become a gold or a total ghost town because the gold rush has ended up there. And with that, I need more work. So I was looking through the papers and I saw all this information about this expedition in Antarctica. And I said, well, I bet if I take my team down south, I can find myself somewhere to work because at the end of the day, snow is snow to a sledder, so we might as well get this taken care of.
Absolutely. And to that end, up in um, that area, you've become acquainted with a gentleman called Gregor Pulaski, who's another dog sledder. And he's, if anything, the one who's uh, read out slash pointed out the newspaper story of the expedition to you. In that apparently he's already been approached by James Starkweather to be part of the expedition, and he's basically busy recruiting people he feels are competent enough to handle the rigors of the Antarctic. It seems that James Starkweather was part of an expedition into the Arctic about 27, 28, in which Gregor was the lead dog wrangler. So it's a Starkweather knows Gregor, Gregor knows you kind of
Okay.
link. But yes, I imagine that the scene was something along the lines of you have the windswept the windswept campsite, the dogs spread out around their little huts. And of course, late May, Alaska, the ice is just starting to break. But the snow is still mostly on the ground, and just floating windswept over the ground is this the Fairbanks advertiser that just lands on top of one of the dog huts, and the story on the front page is the story of the expedition heading out, the great heroic venture of the age, the etc. So it sounds as if when Gregor sounds you out about the opportunity, that you're quite likely to bite the bit, as it were.
Oh, absolutely, as long as I can bring my team.
Oh, yeah. Gregor knows better than to separate Wrangler from dogs. That's generally never been a good precursor to anything. So yes, absolutely. He says he'll get back in touch with Starkweather and see about arranging. See what the schedule is, because he reckons, well, from what he's been told, it's going to be gathering in New York sometime in July, and then probably heading out early September. So whilst there is a continent to cross, there is plenty of time to do that. And I imagine that we'll see a transcontinental map with the various railroads lined in with the thick red fabric line coming across the continental US at reasonable pace. Unless, of course, you want to actually sled and run it the whole way, which is an option. There is time.
I mean, I would definitely run to Anchorage, probably take a boat down to California, and then hop a train all the way to New York.
That makes every bit of sense in the book. So we have Sue's on her way. Let's pop over and see where we might find ex-Dr. Tremblay in late of May.
He would most likely be probably coming down from the Laurentian Mountains and going into Montreal to McGill University. Very likely to meet one of his old colleagues, one Dr. Bouchard.
Ooh, yes. So this is actually occurring in that case, I would say a few weeks earlier. So maybe late April, early May.
Okay, yeah, around the snow melt, yeah.
Yep. In the Bouchard is certainly happy to see you, and he says, "Oh, I am so glad you managed to come on down. I have some quite amazing news about an opportunity. Um, I perhaps I'm speaking maybe somewhat out of turn, but there is going to be, the expedition of a lifetime.
Okay, expedition to where?
Antarctica.
That's very far from here in Montreal, is it not?
Well, yes. However, I'm sure you, as practically everybody on the planet is, who hasn't spent the last few years in out in Inuit territory, are aware of the remarkable finds made by the geological biological expedition from what's the name of the place? Miskatonic, uh, down in Arkham, a couple of years ago.
And you speak of an opportunity. What are they looking for exactly? I mean, I'm no longer a physician. I've not been to the university in quite some time. My skills, I would say, are a little rusty. I haven't studied in biology in a very long time. It's been quite a I'm not sure what they would be looking for in someone like me. I certainly understand. Perhaps I do like to be go out to those isolated regions, such as the mountains. But I'm not quite sure what is it that they're looking for.
I think there are, if my information is correct, I believe that they are looking for uh, people of the sort of mindset that has proven themselves capable of dealing with the type of mental challenges that an expedition into the deep Antarctic is going to bring. And I doubt that there would be much doubt as to your suitability. After all, even rusty medical skills are bound to be at a premium um, in such a desolate place.
Yeah, I am quite intrigued by this. I certainly don't have very much going on right now with my life. Maybe it's time I ventured out and found something to ignite that passion in me again. And it might just be something like this. Where is this? You said, Dr. Bouchard? It was at the Miskatonic University in the United States. Is I believe that is.
Yes, just a ways down south across the border, uh, down in the down in central Massachusetts somewhere, I believe.
And you'd put in a good word for me, I would assume.
Oh,
This is one of
absolutely.
your colleagues.
I would be happy to write a letter of introduction to Dr. Moore. He's one of the co, well, I'll use the phrase conspirators of the expedition. Things are still being formed and firmed up, I believe. But yes, be happy to.
Well, I think that I don't think the weather will challenge me. As you know, sometimes up here in Quebec it gets quite cold. I'm sure it's no colder in Antarctica, as I'm sure I'll find out. And maybe I can bring back some of those skills that I haven't had a chance to use, and we'll see where this gets me.
Absolutely. And you end up um, basically corresponding with Dr. Moore in by mail, attaching the letter of introduction from Dr. Bouchard. Um, and there is seeming interest on both sides, and you're invited down to New York City in mid-July for a more thorough briefing once they have um, managed to settle the preliminary arrangements. And speaking of preliminary arrangements, where would one find Charles Stoddard on or around Memorial Day in 1933?
So normally, Stoddard would be out on expedition. However, more local events and politics have come to actually divert his attention a little bit closer to home, not to Miskatonic and Arkham, but in Western Massachusetts, several towns are about to be demolished to be flooded for the Boston water supply, one of which is his hometown, and it's within, honestly, about 20 miles of dinosaur track finds. So there's this narrow window before while the excavations are going, before the project really starts, because the project is happening. That's it. There's no more chance to stop it. Um, to try to find out what we can while we're digging things up and moving the earth, to learn about what was here before it's flooded, and making research about um, the dinosaur presence, and historical, paleontological, and biological studies are about to literally be washed away. So he's probably a little sunburned. Um, it's definitely filthy. We never thought unless it's just start of the day, his clothes. He is out there. He is literally getting his hands dirty as he's searching for um paleontological. He's searching for fossils for signs of the different of life in the different epochs that we know lived in here. Particularly as this is also part of a glacial valley. and this is an area that's about to be completely submerged. But we have this window that's about to be gone.
Indeed. And you've been making use of every minute of even uh, vague sunlight that there's been. Um, it the weather gods do seem to have a sense of humor in the knowing that the area is about to be flooded. They've still sent 3 days in a row of torrential rain, um, which hasn't been really helped but to set uh, tempers adrift. Um, when the pillar riposte um, comes out with its headline of Antarctica or Bust. Um, so, if you would care to read out handout P2, that would be wonderful.
Antarctica or bust. Renowned adventurer sets his sights on the bottom of the world. World famous explorer James Starkweather announced today that he would lead a party of scientists and explorers into uncharted parts of the Antarctic continent this fall. Starkweather, accompanied by geologist William Moore of Miskatonic University in Arkham, Mass, intends to continue along the trail first blazed by the ill-fated Miskatonic University expedition in 1930-31. The Starkweather-Moore expedition will set sail in September from New York City. Like their predecessors, they intend to use long-range aircraft to explore further into the South Pole wilderness than has ever been done before. This is not about the South Pole, Starkweather explained this morning in a prepared speech in his hotel in New York. Many people have been to the pole. We're going to go places where no one has ever been, see and do things that no one alive has seen. The expedition intends to spend 3 months in Antarctica. Extensive use of aeroplanes for surveying and transport, according to Starkweather, will allow the party to chart and cover territory in hours that would have taken weeks on the ground. The goal of this expedition is to find the campsite and last resting place of the 12 men, led by Professor Charles Lake, who first discovered the Miskatonic Range and who were killed there by an unexpected storm. The mapping and climbing of the mountains in that range and an aerial survey of the lands on the far side are also important goals. The peaks are tremendous, Starkweather explained. The tallest mountains in the world. It's my job to conquer those heights and bring home their secrets for all of mankind. We have the finest equipment money can buy. We cannot help but succeed. Starkweather, 43, veteran of the Great War, has led expeditions on 4 continents and was present on the transpolar flight of the airship Italia, whose crashed near the end of its voyage on the North Pole ice cap received.
The North Polar ice cap received. The space appears to be missing.
Ah. The end of its voyage on the North Polar ice cap received worldwide attention. Moore, 39, a full professor of geology, is also the holder of the Smith Chair of Paleontology at Miskatonic University. He has extensive field experience in harsh climates and has just taken part in expeditions to both the Arctic and the Himalayan plateau. So I feel like Charles has some feelings that basically it sounds like his department head is planning this and has said nothing about him at this point.
Mm-hmm. That's a fair assessment.
Yeah. He's also not exactly. Does it say where he is? So there's going to be the moment of it's like, okay, we're going to put my tools safely away because that is a thing you do. He's going to make an attempt to wash his hands, and he's going to find the nearest phone. And attempt to call basically his office. I don't expect him to be there. But his first attempt is going to be to call Professor Moore's office?
You do manage to get through to Professor Moore's office, but as you say, it's at this point quite late in the afternoon by professorial standards, at least. So he's not in his office. In fact, according to the bursar who you get to talk to, he went down to New York City just over a week ago on a short sabbatical.
I see. Would it be possible? Did he leave a forwarding number or a hotel
He
where I could
did.
telegram him?
Yes, he did leave a forwarding contact at the Amherst Hotel in New York City.
So Stoddard will jot that down. And thank you for that information. And I hope you have a good day.
Indeed. Thank you. And just before he hangs up and goes, when should we expect you back?
We'll see how my conversation with Professor Moore goes. I believe he will be the one overseeing that decision.
Very good, sir. And yes, you're given you have a phone number for the Amherst Hotel, which is apparently 55220, New York.
I will admit I did forget out of character fellow about school year, but honestly, a lot of colleges are out around now, so all right. So the next thing to do, of course, is call the Amherst Hotel, seeking the good professor, Dr. William Moore.
And you do indeed. You're it's but a few moments, and you are put through. And a familiar voice answers, "Yes, this is Professor Moore."
So, as a quick sort of litmus test, what sort of relationship would Stoddard and Moore have? Would it be by because it's professional? Would it be one that is strictly professional, or do you think there is some familiarity in it?
I think there's space for there to be some familiarity in it, should you wish. I could see it being a straightforward professional. I could see it being the sort of um, occasionally getting invited over to each other for dinner, sort of once a semester, sort of thing.
It was how polite does he have to be strictly polite? All right, thank you. So when Professor picks up, he goes, Moore, why am I just hearing about this expedition now? Doesn't even bother introducing himself. This is probably not the first time that there's been some call about an expedition, most of which were other things. But he just opens up with that. Why am I just hearing about this now? You know what they found from the Cambrian area, the pre-Cambrian area, what that means. We've talked about this, like, and now I find out through the newspaper.
Oh, my dear Stoddard, I can only but apologize. It's been an absolute rush of all sorts of just unexpected things hitting from left, right, and center. Between you and me and these three walls, Starkweather's a great man, but I don't know that I would trust him to organize the sinking of a tea party, if you know what I mean.
And you're trusting him with
But
something this big?
I'm just very glad that he seen fit to let me be a part of it. And quite honestly, I could really do with the resourcefulness of a fellow such as yourself on this. Um, not just because of the opportunity, but as Styre and Lake showed, the risk of things going astray are paramount.
You know, you know all you had to do. All I had to know is exist, and I want to be on this one. Uh, if you can, if you're in charge, if you're in charge of logistics and you can trust his wallet, I think there's a lot this expedition can do. Uh, Miskatonic will need your signing off on the leave of absence for the expedition. However,
Well, the one piece of good fortune in that regard is that the whilst the personal outcome of the prior expedition was perhaps less than fortunate for most of the uh, the expedition members, the fiscal outcome for the university with the worldwide news that was spread has been nothing but stellar. So the powers that be are more than happy to see through whatever paperwork there needs to be to for this to go smoothly. Um, in fact, I've had to fight off the provost on a few occasions to try to brand the expedition with the Miskatonic mark as opposed to keeping our independence. But James is quite adamant that we are a private venture and will remain so. But
understood.
I will I will be in touch, and it's a but a few days after that particular conversation, um, just as they're closing down the final um, dig scoops of earth into the dams and starting the inevitable flooding of the Vale, that you do in fact receive a letter with some further invite details and an invite down to New York City for early July. Um,
Yeah.
that's
So
quickly looking. Yeah.
Stoddard will make his arrangements and make sure appropriate paperwork is taken care of for his sabbatical.
Absolutely, and there's oddly
Probably had a couple of TAs or like students doing intern work on the site, and like it's like, okay, you're the TA, oversee that, gets that finished up.
oh, we're talking Miskatonic University. There is an practically infinite supply of grad students.
Right. I mean, nothing ever strange in this universe happened in Greenwich, Mass. Never. There's nothing can go wrong with just leaving a couple students to continue the very legitimate look into the art, the
Mhm.
paleontological record in this particular valley. Nothing of interest to this genre at all.
It's a walk in the park, a slow um, trip by rowboat down the still flowing waters as they rise, with no hint of dark shadows below at all. That's just the cloud above casting weird shadows. And so we get to move the calendar forwards to the second week in July 33. And we find the group gathered together with Messrs. Starkweather and Moore in a hotel conference room just off get this right, yeah, just off of 8th Avenue in New York City, as at least the players can hopefully see. The conference room is basically set out with models of most of the major equipment that the expedition is going to use, the Boeing 347s, the expedition ship, the SS Gabrielle, the ubiquitous globe, and of course the blank map of the Antarctic continent, which is pretty much just a coastline and very little else at this point. And James Starkweather is at the head of the table, laying forth, talking about the magnificence of the science that they're about to do on behalf of mankind, the glory and excitement of the expedition, the potential for fame and recognition throughout the world of those that are fortunate enough to see their stars align with the expedition itself. And as no doubt questions come in from around the table, they're mostly brushed off by Starkweather, waved aside as mere minor issues, and oh yes, that's all well taken care of and in hand. And if pressed, it's Moore who will interject and give a cautious and reasoned answer. Some things they quite clearly do not as yet have a handle on. This includes things, given the amount of scientists in the room, I feel it's quite possible, for instance, that the inevitable question of just how much aviation gasoline is going to be required for a journey of this magnitude. And you get the sense that that's a subject that the two men between them have not yet quite thought through. They don't have an answer ready prepared, even though Moore is sitting with a stack of papers and packing lists that are they've accounted down to the last knife and fork in the cutlery set, but seemingly haven't thought about whether they need 100, 500, or 1,000 gallons of aviation fuel.
My backup character is particularly annoyed by this. My current character is just probably encountered this a little bit more in the financiers often overlooking something and going, okay, we're doing this again.
But I would say if there are any initial thoughts or concerns that the characters might have, feel free to air them, as it were, or failing that, this is essentially the first opportunity that the group as a whole has had to sit down and be around the same table and see each other face to face. Some of you are, of course, known to one another. Dr. Wigglesworth and Dr. Stoddard are certainly at least professionally aware of each other, if not actual acquaintances. It is quite likely that there's other connections around the group.
I'd like to actually propose a connection between Stoddard and Big Suze, because I think her character is one that perhaps fewer of us would have had a chance to interact with. But since Stoddard has done so much exploration over the years, he has perhaps been on an expedition, or she perhaps sledded for Alaskan expedition he might have been on.
It's good to see you, Stodgy. How you doing? It's been a while.
It's been a while. Dirt's just as old.
Snow's just as cold.
On the subject of the gasoline, do we have a dedicated aviations expert? I'll be looking over at Moore and then Starkweather.
We are currently in the process of engaging people of suitable skill and temperament for that requirement. Obviously, in an endeavor such as this, that is one of the foremost and most visible positions, and we must make sure to get the choice perfectly right.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Have you any leads in this department?
Well, we have had a couple of recommendations. One from our ship's radio operator. He says he knows of somebody who he believes will be suitable for the the job. Um Likewise, we are trying to obtain the services of the renowned uh, Douglas Halperin. But even if we were to be fortunate enough to find his help, then we will more than we need obviously need backups for every position in the expedition. Hence the choice to go with as large a ship as we have, so that we have plenty of space both for the people but also for their necessary supply.
Yes, how many planes are you planning to bring?
We are planning to bring um, three of the new Boeing 247s, as well as a Fairchild FC2 for more local flying and cargo carrying.
It seems we'll need a fair number of pilots then, not to mention the backups.
It's definitely going to be one of the more critical skill areas of building the team. Fortunately, the Great War did at least produce a number of aviators of sufficient mettle to consider an expedition such as ours.
Well, what about the we're planning to take?
I'm sorry, you partially cut out just as you mentioned what they were trying to take.
Sorry about that. I wanted to ask about the ship.
Oh, yes, the Gabrielle. The Gabrielle is a details over here.
And I'll just add that while all this dry conversation is going on about
Mhm.
airplanes and boats, Dr. Tremblay is mostly sitting quietly, and if you pay close enough attention, you might see him reach into his jacket and just take a little quick swig from a flask every once in a while the conversations are going on. Just kind of looking around and sizing everybody up as opposed to paying attention to what they're actually talking about.
You gonna share, Trombley?
I don't know of which you're talking about.
That
This here is,
fantastic flask of syrup you have in your pocket.
it is definitely my medicine. I would not want to share it with anyone unless you are very sick yourself, of course.
With
I am a
seeing how you're
doctor.
hitting it, I think I might be feeling a bit of the vapors.
I see. Uh, I'm not quite sure. Are you serious, madam?
Let me try some first and I'll tell you one way or the other.
I will surreptitiously slide it over to you and say, yeah, just don't let anyone see you taking of just a quick little sip. That's all.
I take a sizable sip, um, and quickly put the cap on and slide it back across the table.
And by the way, it is not anything good. It is pretty much just straight up hooch, of course.
It's better than what I got up in the camps in Alaska.
Why, thank you. I do make it myself up in the Laurentian Mountains.
Fantastic. You make sure and bring some of that medicine with us down south.
And I just kind of give a wink and go back to sizing up the rest of the table.
Valentina's been taking notes on everyone and just kind of keeps writing notes about everyone at the table and on the expedition.
I was going to say by the end of the presentation, she'll probably have filled about two notebooks worth. Yes, for what it's worth, the SS Gabrielle is a 440-foot long oil burning steamer capable of about 12 knots with a range of about 12,000 miles, drafting about 7,500 tons.
Sounds big enough to hold 4 planes.
It's, yeah, there's, yes, yeah, just under 7 tons of available cargo space in there. So, oh, sorry, 7,000 tons available cargo space. So she's a girthy. Um, and unless there's any other immediate questions of Starkweather-Moore, I think that meeting basically rambles on quite possibly significantly longer than anybody. Well, anybody apart from Valentina is interested in the meeting lasting. I have a feeling that Valentino is just going to be sitting there soaking in information, any and all information that comes her way for the duration. With the net effect that it's probably about 3 o'clock in the afternoon when the meeting breaks up. Just trying to make sure I don't sidestep the timeline, because that would be unfortunate. So yes, you're basically all gathering outside, just outside of the Amherst Hotel, in the corner of 8th and 44th in Manhattan. It's a very sultry July. The heavy wet heat that just automatically wilts shirt collars and hat brims. This definitely makes itself felt. And you're basically the final words of Starkweather-Moore is that they hope that they will, if everything goes to plan, they will gather the team in early September. So you essentially have a couple of months, maybe a bit more, to do with as you will.
Is the expectation that we would remain in the area while waiting, or that we should be returning home?
Whatever you feel makes sense for yourselves, as it were. There's no the next expectation that Starkweather-Moore have of you is that you would be available in New York in early September.
Okay.
Now, just to fill in some of the pieces of background, there is, of course, quite a considerable amount of information and locales available from the that survived the original 1930-31 expedition. Should you wish to dig into that, there's no doubt all sorts of information on the two expedition leaders in particular. Obviously, Stoddard and to some extent Wigglesworth well acquainted with Dr. Moore. And there's also possible avenues to go look at the various pieces of equipment that is being readied for those that have those sort of bents, or indeed taking the dogs out for one final Canadian Arctic hussar before they're kennelled up for multiple weeks in the belly of a ship.
I'm good with whatever everyone else is thinking, but if maybe Gregor wants to give me a run for my money, I have a good $50 on my head.
Yeah, Gregor says he'll have to take you up on that once you get down south. He's going to take a steamer over to Europe and go spend a bit of time with his family.
Guess that's
Oh,
reasonable enough.
Stoddard is gonna, since we've got that time to wrap up, is basically gonna make sure it's gonna get everything in all together for make sure his TAs aren't messing up the classes, or the grad students aren't messing up the classes they're running for him, and getting the coursework together for because we're basically basically missing a school year for this, so getting things
mhm.
lined up. So the sabbatical, here's the coursework, here's all the stuff you need, everything lined up for, hey, I'm gonna be gone for a year. My ducks are in a row. Probably dumping way too much on an adjunct professor. You know how it goes. Probably has an adjunct professor who's really upset he's not going on this.
That too. But a good way of quieting an adjunct professor is by drowning them in work. So
He gets to basically work without me looking over his shoulder for a year. Like,
absolutely. What about the good ex Dr. Tremblay?
At this point, I would probably do two things. One is I would head back up to Quebec, and I would probably be shutting down my cabin for at least a year out in the Laurentian Mountains, making sure it's locked up tight and can survive a winter on its own. And I think the other thing I would do is I would try to see if there were any journals or any information from the previous doctor on the previous expedition. I feel like um, news of this has been at the forefront for everyone, and I feel like I've been away for a while from the world, and I maybe need to catch up on what all this expedition was about, and maybe immerse myself more in detail with what the previous doctor was faced with and what he had to do.
Absolutely. And you do, with the previous doctor not making it back from the camp or Lake's camp, what you do get you do, however, get a hold of as part of um, Dr. Dyer's notes is um, he gathered up as much as he could of the notes that had been taken, particularly of the what's now described as um, amphibious plant life that the big three-toed beings that Lake and his team discovered. And the more anatomical notes that have been made about those.
So I think at this point, Dr. Tremblay would probably look at this and be a little incredulous of the whole thing and be like, this is kind of a little out there as far as I'm concerned. I think I'll concern myself more with human anatomy and make sure a lot of these people don't die to the rigors of the cold, because it doesn't look like a lot of them are going to be able to handle it.
You do have this vague feeling of a lot of ivory towered closeted academicals introduced into actual Arctic or Antarctic conditions. Making sure that the skin salves and so forth are well stocked is probably going to be a priority. So the question is, I guess, whether Dr. Tremblay is kept company by Big Suze and her pack, or if Big Suze is striking out on her own, as it were, or doing something else.
I'd be more than happy to give old Trimble there a ride.
You'd like to head out to the Laurentian Mountains, would you? I think out of all the people here, you're probably one of the most I can count on to make it through this expedition without losing several fingers. So I'm really kind of dependent on you. Absolutely. If you want to come up to a little bit of some central Quebec and see it, it's beautiful. Even in the middle of summer, there's some beautiful snow-capped mountains.
Well, that sounds wonderful. And as for old Frostbite, I figured that out once as she motions to her nose and you see just the tip is missing.
Yeah, you learn it once, I would say, and you'll never forget it.
Well, then let's mosey, old Tremblay.
If there is time around setting up, getting the house in order, Stoddard would also like to review what had come out from the expedition before, because he definitely would have been following it very avidly when it was coming out. But let's be honest, there was a lot of speculation and not full data. So sort of reviewing the work before he goes into it again.
Oh, absolutely. And it's basically as per the published works, the departmental notes that Stoddard can get his hands on to the side, as it were, do tend to downplay the more fantastical views of Lake and put those down as hallucinations brought about by excitement and lack of sleep during the events. So it's there's certainly whilst accepting that there is a great pre-Neolithic life type story and beings that science were not previously aware of that were indeed discovered. The nature of them was downplayed to more accepted biological norms than perhaps was being
Like,
pursued by
like
Lake.
clearly they're just a type of dinosaur.
Hmm.
Like, this is my thing. I want to know about these Precambrian species. I want to get my hands on them and see what they missed and what they got wrong.
And such an opportunity. Absolutely. And Dr. Wigglesworth, in a similar vein.
Yes, Dr. Wigglesworth is going to spend a weekend here in New York to catch up with some friends of his. And then he's going back to his work and family life for a time to make arrangements as needed for the museum and his other holdings at the GIA, for example. He'll divert his research efforts into the previous expedition as well as funding for this one and equipment, proper personnel, things of that nature. He'll try to work as closely with Moore as necessary to establish the preparations entirely.
Wonderful, wonderful. I think just to get a sense of how far off track we start off, I'd like to ask for a credit rating roll from the good doctor.
Okay. Oof. Not so good. Looks like a failure.
Indeed. Yeah, you as the weeks pass on, you have more and more of an understanding of the difficulties under which Dr. Moore is working under. In that you're coming up against you get to be part of some of the um, more tense discussions, for instance, that Moore has with the Boeing Aircraft Company, as to apparently there's this upstart airline calling themselves United, that have just placed a major order of some 25 of the 247s. And the whilst Moore keeps presenting the urgency of the fulfillment of the expedition order, um, it it keeps getting pushed back against the um, the commercial realities of the manufacturers. Um, it sounds as though it won't be catastrophic, but they're now talking in terms of deliveries in the latter half of August as opposed to originally late July, early August.
And how about for recruitment and personnel?
Recruitment wise, there is more luck. It seems as though the the magic of the prior expedition that caught the minds of most of the world through the radio broadcast coming out of Kingsport Head um, has managed to keep itself alive over the last 18 months or so. And as news has spread of the new expedition, um, there has been a reasonable inflow of expressions of interest, such that you're, whilst you probably would have liked the expedition to be, say, 50% bigger than the 50 some people that it is, um, the realities of shipping and logistics probably means that you're at that um, balance point between possibility and capability.
Yeah, it's important not to overextend ourselves. We don't want to endanger anyone who's not prepared for this extreme condition.
And at the same time, you know that there's had to be compromises made as far as numbers of more or less critical personnel. So a lot of the recruitment effort has gone into things like um, finding mountaineers that are also capable radio operators. Essentially having people that are capable of performing, preferably 3 different jobs within the umbrella of all that's needed, but certainly at least 2 for a lot of spots. But it seems as though that effort has been, at least to Edward's um, opinion, reasonably well managed and achieved.
Well, we do what we can.
And so the calendar moves steadily forwards.
Stefan,
Yep.
would it be
Oh, sorry.
possible for Valentina? She would probably look into previous members and seeing if she can get some quotes there, but also if there's any, while there's renewed interest in this expedition, is there any darker rumors or is any bad press it's getting or something like that?
Oh,
Rumors
okay.
around it.
Mm-hmm. Um, I'll say go ahead and roll. Trying to think if it would be something other than library use, but I do think that library use is probably what Valentina would end up using essentially, unless you have some other thought as to how you're digging up the dirt, as it were.
The other thing I could think of is if I'm questioning people and like psychology or something like that would work as well, but library use works fine. So
Okay.
We can go with that.
Well, let's start with library use, and
That is a hard success, I believe. Yes.
ooh, very nice. Uh, let's see what we've digged up. Um, ooh. Excuse me. I need to find. Ooh, do I have it in here? That's a good question. Have I been that prepared? Um, okay. There is something here. You do come across the name of Acacia Lexington. Apparently, Mr. Starkweather had in his previous career uh, as an adventurer slash travel guide, um, did a lot of work out in deep Africa. And at one point, he was the leader of an expedition hired by Miss Acacia Lexington. And Miss Acacia Lexington rings a bell because she's one of the foremost socialites of New York in the mid late 20s. She's managed to keep herself to herself the last few years, but certainly in the Roaring Twenties, she was definitely out there. And she had hired, or her father, Percival Lexington, who's the big company corporate magnate, or magnate rather, had hired Starkweather as a tour guide for his daughter and an entourage through the jungles of the Belgian Congo. The stories don't you're not able to get a clear story as to what actually happened, but the generally proclaimed story is that the expedition got attacked by natives, and it was only through Starkweather's personal bravery and excellent wild wilderness skills that the remnants of the expedition managed to make it back to civilization with basically no supplies left. You do, however, also find a note from a fellow journalist at the time. So this would be back in 26, I believe, that seems to suggest that the Lexington butler, in a caught in a moment of unusual candor brought about by a whiskey bottle, seemed to suggest that perhaps it was more due to the mismanagement by Starkweather the things went awry. They were based. There seems to be a hint that they were ill prepared to start off with, and therefore, when trouble struck, the inevitable happened.
Okay. Thank you.
Now, as far as survivors goes, the big survivor, as it were, which would be that of Professor Dyer. He disappeared. Whilst he returned to the services of the university for a short time after the return of the prior expedition, but he basically grew more and more distant and got a more or less permanent leave of absence from the university. But after that, he then reappears trying to break into the Geological Museum at the University in Arkham in late October of 32, and is essential, but he's run off, having been recognized, and he's since disappeared with no real trace. there were a total of 5 survivors from the original expedition that made it back to the States. Dyer is now unknown where he is. One is was taken into the Massachusetts asylum pretty much straight off the gangplank on the boat. That was Danforth. Sherman, nobody knows what happened to Sherman. Peabody still works at the university. He was the one of the geologists, the junior geologist.
Say
And
Peabody?
Peabody, yeah.
Peabody, okay.
Yeah. And then McTighe was the radio operator who got somewhat of a promotion, one might say, in that he is now the radio operator at Kingsport masthead, just out on the east coast, so a little ways north of Boston, east of Arkham.
At some point before they leave, Valentino will probably try to hit Kingsport and talk to them, but that doesn't have to be at this very moment. They've got a lot of research to do and stuff like that.
Yep. No, that's fine. Let's see. So just to highlight the the great art. Here's Kingsport's head radio station. You get a hold of McTighe. He's a fairly jovial, cheerful fellow until you bring up the expedition, at which point he turns immediately somber. And shakes his head and says, "Yeah, the mountains of madness. That's what Dyer called them. I guess they call them the Miskatonic Mountains now. Incredible things, God in heaven. Like hallucinations, they reached up so high. Impossible peaks and spires. And evil. They looked evil. I think they were." And yeah, you get to hear the stories of how they had to quite clearly just tie up Danforth, the pilot, on the way on the ship on the way back. He would just keep screaming and muttering in tongues. And whilst apparently Danforth wasn't the nicest man to start off with, even McTighe can't think that what seemingly happened to him was a fit punishment for man or beast.
I would ask him if he was aware that Professor Dyer is missing or disappeared.
He'd heard a rumor to that effect, but he hadn't dug any deeper into it, as it were.
Do you think he may have been affected the same way as Danforth?
Well, he certainly wasn't himself. On as we were heading back, quiet. He used to be jovial and social, but he just turned quiet and introspective. I know McTighe mentions that Dyer used to be more or less inseparable with Professor Moore, but it seemed like a rift was developing even between them after his return.
Interesting. Do you know if you will be broadcasting the next expedition from here? Or receiving it, I should say?
I'm certainly hoping that they'll be making broadcasts that we can pick up. We do, after all, have the largest reception antenna on this half of the globe, but it is a long way to, well, quite literally the other side of the world.
Yes, it's amazing the technology we have these days.
Yeah, they talk about the radio waves bouncing off the meteor trails in the upper atmosphere, but I don't know that I quite understand it myself. I just know that it seemingly works.
That's the main thing that matters. That's for sure. Well, thank you for your time. I'm going on the expedition, so hopefully we have pretty good luck.
Oh, I wish you all the best, and I have to say you're a braver man than me for going. I would not go back. That place is not for us.
Valentina would nod and have a nice day, sir, and leave then. A little more somber as she leaves.
Absolutely. God bless, miss. And with that, I think we can, unless there's anything else, move the calendar forwards yet again and flick the leaves around on the spiral bound desk calendar until we get to September. And we find the investigators yet again gathering. This time, the weather is nowhere near quite as horrendously hot. It's just humid and sticky in the Indian summer of New York. Um, as you all meet up in the lobby of the Amherst Hotel, where the gentleman behind the front desk hands you let's see if I can get this to work. So in the notes, there is now at the bottom a ship invite. Uh, on the back of the card for the Amherst Hotel in New York, 727 8th Avenue, and with a handwritten note, welcome to New York. Please be so good as to join us at the ship as soon as you have freshened up. SS Gabrielle, Pier 79B, 12th Avenue at 34th, next to the Italian Royal Mail berth. Regards, Moore.
Fantastic.
And this is to go without delay, I assume?
It does seem to suggest some urgency.
Well, I wouldn't want to miss my ride, so I will definitely head out right away to the boat.
Indeed. Well, you do have just the bellhops will take your uh, more or less copious luggage. I imagine that even Big Sue's is bringing along a couple of trunks worth of gear. Uh, quite what extent of general clothing Miss Russo has packed is maybe explored in the days to come.
Probably a little underdressed for the weather conditions down south at this point. But we'll
Quite
figure it out on the
probably.
way.
Oh yeah. So yes, bellhops will take your stuff up to the fourth floor. You're told that Professor Moore and Dr. Starkweather have rooms up on the fifth floor, and both the third and the fourth floor are basically filled with the ship's company. But that apparently most people are out at the docks at the moment. But you all manage to freshen up after the inevitable soot of the train journeys and make your way out to the berth where you find the SS Gabrielle moored up along a quay that has a couple of rail lines running down each side of it with a large warehouse mid-quay and the ubiquitous loading crane busy loading crates into the, in this case, the forward cargo hold. And I think that's as good a point as any to close down for our first session. So thank you very much indeed. And I hope you've had as much fun as I've had so far. And there is lots more to come. And we'll see where it takes us.